they won't give me any work. Hey, it's Forrest. So I'm making a video here. One of the questions I get asked a lot, because I've had the truck company for a long time. And one of the things that comes up a lot of times is when you're talking to somebody who has just started pursuing getting their DOT or their MC if they're going to go interstate. Now, as an idea for you, can you make money? And we're in vehicle shipping. Can you make money shipping vehicles in the state you live in? And in our case, it's Florida. Well, in Florida, it's tough going if that's all you're going to do is just run around the state of Florida. And the problem with Florida is that, like, from Jacksonville to Miami is 352 miles. Typically on your 11-hour clock, you can't run to Miami and back in the same day, right? So because that's like 700 miles, and you're not going to click off 700 miles in 11 hours. It's just not going to happen. So what you end up doing is you end up going from Jacksonville to Miami and then part of the way back. So you pick up a load, you run it to Miami, and then you drop in Miami, and then you pick up something in Miami and try to come back. Well, you're going to have to stop and do a 10-hour reset on the way back to Jacksonville. And if you look at the rates on that run from Jacksonville to Miami, they're junk, they're garbage, they're crap. So you wind up going from Jacksonville to Miami, coming back, and you burn your 11-hour drive time because it's about 6 hours, give or take. It's about 6 hours to Miami, but you have a 14-hour duty clock. And the problem is that when you in Jacksonville, and let's say you load, and it takes you an hour to load, that's an hour with your 14 hours gone. Then you have to take your break. That's another half hour of your 14 hours gone. And then you get down there and you have to unload. That's another half hour to an hour of your time gone. Then you have to go from there to someplace else and pick up the other vehicles. That's another half hour to an hour. So you easily get down to 10 or 11 hours of drive time left, and you just can't get down there and back in that length of time. It doesn't work out. And that's if you just stay moving to get that done. And you can take those same numbers and transpose them going to, Pensacola. It's not quite as bad if you go to Tampa, but you don't go to Tampa, you end up going to Naples or something like that, a little bit further south on the west coast of Florida. So the problem you run into is Florida's a big state. You can run a lot of miles, right? Because you really want to run some miles, but you can run a lot of miles, but you end up spending the night in the truck anyway. So you end up, having to pull over. So instead of having an 11-hour day, you've actually got a 21-hour day, and you've only hauled 6 vehicles in that 21 hours, right? And the rates are terrible because they'll pay you, maybe if you're going out of out of state from Jacksonville or anywhere else out of state, on most vehicles, let's say, you're on the load boards, and the load boards are telling you, hey, we'll give you 50, 60 cents a mile in the state of Florida. Whereas if you're going out of state, the load board is going to tell you, hey, we'll give you 80, 85 cents, dollar a mile maybe if you get lucky, going out of the state. So now you're running all around state at 50 cents a mile. Now at 50 cents a mile, because you also have to figure out how many miles you drive to figure out your monthly cost, which is your truck payment, your trailer payment, your insurance. Those are all monthly costs. Fuel can be passed through, so you can figure out how much per mile you're going to burn up of fuel, but you have to take one thing in consideration. And I find that a lot of truck drivers out there don't do this. What they don't do is they don't figure out their fuel cost on a per mile basis. And when I say that, base it on a monthly cycle. So how many miles you run per month will determine how the margins affect the amount of money you're coming in. And so if you're running around the state of Florida, which is limited, but it's just far enough to cause you to sleep in that truck, and then you start breaking that down by the hour, it's terrible. At 50 cents a mile is terrible because your costs are probably 40 cents a mile, 45 cents a mile by the time you have your other costing, your monthly cost and expense and fuel put in there. So you're spending 45 cents a mile to make 50 cents a mile. Now, of course, that's not per vehicle. If you're running 3 cars or 4 cars, you're running 50 cents a mile times, say, 4 cars. That's $2 a mile, but 45 to 50 cents of that mile. So you're only making $1.50 a mile on 3 cars or 4 cars. Sorry, that's on 4 cars. On 3 cars, you're making less. You're making about $1 a mile on 4 cars. run around Florida, when if you went out of the state, you could add 30 to 40%, 50% at least, on top of that, and additional money. So that's why I always tell people, they want to run out of state and not just run around the state of Florida. And here's another consideration too. So if let's say you load the cars, right? And you load the cars in Jacksonville, and then you, again, off your 14-hour duty cycle, it takes you an hour to load the cars in Florida. You're at one of the ports or something, or train port or port of Jacksonville, or even if you're at one of the auctions, that could take even longer depending on who the auction is, because sometimes it's tough getting in and out of there. And let's say you got to make a couple of stops. So you got one at one auction, one at another auction, and one maybe at a dealership being picked up to take to an auction wherever you're going. Well, that takes time. So you spend a couple of hours trying to pick up the cars to get ready to go, right? So now you pick up the cars, you get ready to go, but then you're gonna, and I say only, you're gonna drive 5 or 6 hours down, and now you're on your drive time, and your duty cycle is 14, your drive time is 11. So now you're gonna drive 5 or 6 hours, right? To say, let's say you get to go to Miami, and so you're gonna drive 5 hours to Miami. And the reason I say that, because you get paid by the mile, not the time. So you want to put as many miles under those wheels as you possibly can. So you drive to Miami, which takes you 5 hours. And I'm going to say the word only 5 hours, right? So you drive 5 hours to Miami, but then you spend another couple of hours, maybe 3, because you hit Miami and the traffic is terrible. So now you spend 2 or 3 hours in Miami. You've already burned 2 getting loaded. You spend 2 or 3 down, and now you have 5 hours of your duty cycle gone. You only got 9 hours left in the drive cycle that you have. You've already driven 5, right? So you drove 5 miles. 5 hours of it off getting down there, and now you've only got maybe 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours of drive time that you can put under those wheels. So you've loaded everything, but now you're starting back. So you may have 4 hours of drive time, 3 probably of drive time. You don't get very far away from Miami in 3 hours or so, and then you're sleeping in the truck overnight because you got to run your 10 hours off, and you get up the next day and you drive back. Or if you take a load of cars from Jacksonville Port to, say, Mobile, Alabama, you could put the whole 11 hours, well, minus your break time, you could put the whole 11 hours, because it's only going to take you, again, let's say it takes you 2 hours to load the cars up in Jacksonville. And again, this could be any city. So let's say it takes you 2 hours to load the cars up in Jacksonville. You load them up and you head out to, say, Mobile, Alabama, or, New Orleans or something over there. That's a good, 10 hours, 11 hours of drive time. So you spent 2 hours here. You've now spent 11 hours of drive time under the wheels. And because how many miles is that you've now turned? So you end up driving the whole time instead of what I was telling you before, where you're burning up 5 or 6 hours. So you drive over there and you burn your whole drive time up, and then you park for the night. You get up the next morning, you go drop those cars and pick your new cars up and head another 10 or 11 hours over. So that's why it really doesn't make a lot of sense to try to stay in Florida versus, driving outside the state or long distances. The further distance you drive, the more money you're going to make, because it's more efficient. You're not burning time loading and unloading when you're doing that. And so my argument would be drive out of state. And to do that, you got to have an MC. And so that's what you want to do. You want to pick up the loads that go the farthest. And to do that, you're going to have to get out of Florida, because you're going to go 352 miles one way, and it's about 350 miles or so the other way. That's about all you got. And that's not going to, and because of the traffic and stuff, you're going to run into it that the Miami way, or you're going to hit some when you get over by Tallahassee. And even Pensacola is not fun in the afternoons if you were getting over there. Then even Jacksonville's not fun. So consider that when you start considering what loads you're going to look for on the load board.